Well, dozens of demonstrators turned out after an Ontario Superior Court justice acquitted 5 former members of Canada's World Junior Hockey team of sexual assault. The group gathered outside the London, Ontario courthouse Thursday evening, including Jessica Bonnelly-Damptey. The director of the Hamilton and Area Sexual Assault Center says that since the verdict didn't go the way of the complainant, the show of support was uplifting. The ruling came roughly 7 years after the incident that led to the charges, an encounter that took place in a hotel room in the early hours of June 19th, 2018. So this is the story that a lot of people are talking about today, folks. What is your opinion on this ruling? I guess first off, that's the first question that I'm going to ask you to weigh in on. And by the way, we'll open the phone lines a bit early today because we've got the time to do so. So we'll open the phone lines after I chat with Tim Powers. So we'll have lots of time for you to have your say today. So let's get your opinions percolating to the top of your mind and get ready to let them be heard on the show later on. Again, we'll open the phone lines not only between 11 and 12. We'll extend that a bit. We'll open the phone lines after I chat with Tim Powers. So a little extra time for your calls today. Is this type of behavior more common than we'd like to think when it comes to not just hockey players, but professional sports in general? Has there been a culture, an unhealthy culture, which has existed in the sporting world, which is dripping of masculinity, of course, at the professional level, and all that goes with that, and entitlement? And we know that this is look, folks, is this a one-off? Of course not. This type of behavior is far too common and has been far too common, in my opinion. What's your opinion on the players? Does the acquittal matter as to how you feel about these players? They did not deny doing this. 5 of these men, or we'll call them men, and 1 woman who, look, the judge issued the ruling and said that consent was in question, and look, according to the interpretation of the law and the case that was presented, she found them not guilty. But does that change your opinion of the players at all? Or do you still think that this type of behavior, which happened, we know that this happened, is unsettling and disturbing? And do you think less of any of these players or all of them because of this behavior? Or do you say no, they didn't break the law according to the letter of the law, according to the ruling of the judge, and therefore move on? Now, the NHL says 5 former members of Canada's World Junior Hockey team who were acquitted Thursday on all charges after this are ineligible to play in the league while it reviews the judge's findings. The NHL says in a statement the allegations in the case were disturbing, even if not determined criminal. The league calls the behavior unacceptable. The NHL Players Association says the acquitted players should have the opportunity to return to work. So should these players be allowed to return to the NHL? They were found not guilty. Should that be enough? Should they be allowed to play again? Or do you think that for whatever reason, or for not whatever reason, for the reasons why I already covered, they shouldn't be allowed to play again? So again, some other things that you can talk about when we open the phone lines, as mentioned later on in the show. Also, I saw this story on the CBC website today. We talked a lot about Andy Fillmore, the mayor of Halifax, and Strong Mayor Powers, and the controversy surrounding all of this continues to swirl. Some Halifax councillors say Mayor Andy Fillmore's comments about the role of mayor and the city's top bureaucrat are disconcerting and amount to misinformation. Mayor Fillmore has said that the current municipal structure is blocking him from fixing issues he was elected to work on, like traffic congestion and affordability. He said this during a recent interview on CBC's Maritime Noon. By the way, Andy Fillmore is going to join us here in studio. Vanessa, has that been confirmed that Mayor Fillmore is going to join us in studio for an hour? Okay, and the date of that is what again? Sorry to put you on the spot, but it's a good time to promote it. The 7th of August from 10 to 11. So we're going to have the mayor in studio, so he's going to join me. And that'll be a good chat, and we'll take your calls as well. But anyway, we're referencing this chat on Maritime Noon. He said the CAO holds the power in our organizational chart. I report to the CAO. That's what Fillmore said. But multiple councillors and the current CAO immediately refuted that statement. So I get your take on that as well, and the continuing saga that is council right now here in HRM. So that and whatever else you've got in your mind. Again, lots as always to get to. And I'd like to thank Vanessa Van Ness on the other side of the glass. The control board's doing a fine job as always. And again, hope to hear from many of you in about an hour's time. And thanks so much for tuning in and listening. We appreciate it very much. All right. I saw the story in the Chronicle Herald this week with Halifax poised to cash in on defense boom. Calls grow for a national industrial strategy. Colin Stephenson, Executive Director of DEFSEC Atlantic, joins us to talk about all this. Colin, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. So is that the acronym DEFSEC? Is that pronunciation proper? Is that or?
Yes, DEFSEC, Defense and Security.
Okay.
So DEFSEC Atlantic has been a staple on the Halifax waterfront and in the city for about 20 years now. It grew out of the air show at Shearwater when we were having a Sea-King helicopter replacement program. And when that helicopter was chosen and Sikorsky was awarded the contract, our event moved into the city and started to look for other major defense procurements to focus on and to continue to bring that energy and economic impact to the city that that project had done. And we've spent the last 2 decades really capitalizing on any programs that were happening. Certainly shipbuilding has played a large role in our history, and the supply chains that need to be fulfilled to produce products for the Canadian forces are discussed and debated, and partnerships are created at our event every year in October.
Okay, so it goes September 30th to October 2nd at the Halifax Convention Centre. 400 companies and reps from 35 countries already signed up. And with the increase in defense spending here in Canada, pledged to spend an additional $9 billion, hit the 2% of Canada's GDP going to defense. Obviously, a heightened sense of urgency and a heightened sense of importance this year, right?
Absolutely. We can feel the energy in the requests we've had for participation, the pace of registrations. The exhibition floor has been sold out for several weeks now, well in advance of the show. And there's more companies all the time wanting to get in, because what we're doing is we're attracting more companies than our traditional base of defense companies, ones that have what we'll call dual use application, where they have a use in we'll call it the civilian world, but there may be an application in the defense world as well, and they want to see if they have a fit. So we're really excited about expanding the scope of the show and who we include.
Okay, how about making sure that we get maximum investment, maximum return on investment, and maximize value added for Canadian companies here? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's exactly what is in flux right now. We've had a program for many years where the Government of Canada, through various agencies like ISED, which used to be in Industry Canada, PSPC that does the contracting, and the Department of National Defence, would do evaluations on proposals for these large procurements. And the Canadian content is a big portion of that value proposition that they look for. So international companies looking to bid on major projects are always looking for Canadian content, both in the build of the product that they might be selling and in the in-service support that takes place for 20 years after we've purchased the product. So the more Canadian companies they can involve in those processes, the higher a score they get and the better chance they have of being a successful bidder.
Okay, and when it comes to companies setting up shop here in our region, that number is growing, right? There's lots of interest and lots of innovative companies setting up shop in light of what's happening here.
Absolutely, it's coming from a couple different sources. We have, over my career, 20 plus years in this game now, I've seen companies come like Saab, like Thales, BAE. There are several of these European companies that have set up Canadian offices, and very often here in the Maritimes, and Halifax in particular, They've set up regional offices because they've been successful coming in as part of shipbuilding programs, for example, or other projects. And so they've contributed to the economy by setting up these offices and employing local talent. And then you've got homegrown innovation, which is really the strength of Atlantic Canada, where you've got people that are trained in our universities, come out of our armed forces with great ideas, and they'll start small to medium enterprises, SMEs we call them, and they'll start with 5 employees, grow to 40 employees, get into the program, and then those homegrown ones are really the backbone of our aerospace and defense membership in the association that's here, and can contribute in many ways as well. So we've got a nice perfect storm of growth happening right now with incoming large corporations as well as homegrown.
Okay, when it comes to American companies, we know that we've got this trade war going on, and there's a call to disconnect in some way with, when possible, with American companies. Is that possible when it comes to defense, based on the importance of American companies and their footprint in the industry?
Well, I'm not a tariff expert. It has been true in the past that defense spending has been excluded from tariffs at times. What is true is that Canadian purchasing has been heavily weighted toward American products for a long time. And what every country, every armed forces is looking for is the same thing all companies look for, all customers look for, is reliability, dependability, and predictability. And with some question about that coming out of the U.S. Recently, we're seeing a move toward more partnership with Europeans, with Southeast Asia. So there's lots of opportunity beyond what will have been called the traditional route of buying mostly American product. But there's no doubt that these American multinationals are continue to be very strong players in all of the procurement projects, and we're happy to have projects that we're partnering with these folks that we've been with for a long time too. So definitely there will be some talk about which direction the government trends go in when it comes to procurement, but those evaluations and scores will be driven by those factors of reliability, predictability, price, performance, and it will all be factored in.
How about drone technology? This, I would think, would be cutting edge and something that would be growing. What can you tell us about drones?
Oh, no question that it's really highlighted about what we've seen over the last almost three over years in Ukraine, and by the development of the industry locally, we've seen unmanned systems technology really ramping up with the new system that's coming into 14-wing Greenwood, piloted out of Ottawa, with smaller systems that are being used in all sorts of applications as well as military, whether it's search and rescue or environmental surveillance, military surveillance. Each one of those ships that leaves the harbor now has unmanned systems aboard, whether they be undersea, in the air, that are assisting all the other systems that are on board to extend the reach, surveillance capability of everything we do. So unmanned systems are here to stay. They're absolutely the future because it leads to lower costs, more effective operations, and user safety. So it's definitely exploded as a part of our world, and we can expect that trend to continue. And we've got some really strong companies here in the Maritimes that are leading the charge in that.
Okay, before I let you go, this story that just saw this morning, the Royal Canadian Navy plans to retire some of its older warships this fall. The Navy confirmed that 8 of its 12 Kingston-class vessels will be removed from service following paying off ceremonies in Halifax and Esquimalt, BC. I suppose any thoughts on this? Any reaction to this story?
Well, it's absolutely understandable with the Navy going through its largest regeneration and growth period since World War II. The new product coming on, it needs crews. The AOPS next month we're launching the last of the AOPS ships, the Robert Hampton Gray, and it needs crew. So where's the crew going to come from? If recruiting doesn't fill those gaps, then it's got to come from somewhere. And these MCDV, Maritime Coastal Defense vessels, they were launched out of St. John, New Brunswick in the 80s. So they've served their time, and we use that term paid off, where they've served their time. They've been very useful. In fact, we just had a couple of them return from the Baltic Sea not too long ago. Due to the personnel issues and equipment age, those types of things, we're seeing that regeneration happen, and we're going to have equipment for those sailors to be able to operate off of very soon. So it's a very exciting transitional time for the Navy.
Yeah, and again, a sense of urgency, perhaps. I know that shipbuilding is a very, very slow process. But what about the timeline here? Might there be a heightened sense of urgency?
Well, that's always.
Hey, Colin, are you still there? Okay, I think we lost.
Still here, yeah, I'm hearing you well.
Okay, go ahead. We lost you there for a sec. Go ahead.
No worries. It's always been a concern, the efficiency and the speed of our procurement processes. Literally, the Sea King project took decades. It was easier to measure it in decades than it was in years. But efficiencies through government planning, acquisition, our tendency to Canadianize each of the projects that we get because of the extreme environments that Canadian Navy, Air Force, Army operate in with, 3 coasts spanning the huge space that we have. We understand the need to Canadianize any product, but we're seeing the urgency of getting a military product from planning stage to deployment to the battlefield stage being such an urgent need right now, especially in the smaller systems. We need to streamline, and we're excited about the opportunity that the new government is putting on to make that more effective again. We have heard this story before, being more efficient, getting the process done faster. We're excited to support the process and see that it happens that way. And we're excited to communicate to our attendees at our show how that process is going to help them get their products to market faster.
Colin, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much. Good chat.
Thank you very much, Todd.
All right, take care. Colin Stephenson, Executive Director of DEFSEC Atlantic. We'll talk more about this Hockey Canada decision when we come back. All right, Canada's Secretary of State for Sport says the federal government continues to closely monitor national sport organizations to ensure a culture of safety, respect, and integrity. He says the trial of former members of Canada's World Junior Hockey Team has sparked a national conversation about the problematic culture in men's hockey. Joining us to break down the decision is Wayne MacKay, Law Professor Emeritus at Dalhousie University. Wayne, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
No problem.
All right, so the verdict itself was kind of spread out over the run of a day, and the justice made several kind of foreshadowing comments about it, about the lack of credibility of the defendant, or rather of the accuser, and is this normal in this type of case for the judge to kind of deliver a decision in this way?
It's part of it is fairly normal in that because this is, first of all, it was a very important case and very high profile. The fact that she was sort of very thorough and sort of specifically organized in the way she did it is not surprising. It's a little surprising that she actually read the decision. More often it would just be delivered and left for people to read, which they could do as well. But I think that was really because of the profile and the importance of the case. So in that sense, it made sense, although it was a little unusual. And of course, there was so much attention that was focused on it that everyone was interested.
Do you think ultimately not having a jury did it benefit the defendants, or did it, or who did it, or did it not benefit either the prosecution or the defendants?
Well, I think personally it clearly benefited the defendants because, well, first of all, they couldn't have got a better result than they got from the judge, but That's after the fact. But I think that on a jury there might have been a bit more sympathy for, well, there was certainly sympathy from the judge, but had a bit more impact on the victim situation or the complainant situation. And with 12 people, 12 of your peers, you never quite know what the result's going to be. Now, granted, to get a conviction, they would require 12 people, but and that's not impossible because views were quite divided on this. And I think it is an interesting kind of point that the reason the juries were dismissed were, I'm not saying they did this deliberately, but actions by the lawyers for the defendants that led to them being dismissed. So it kind of has you question a little bit whether that was just good luck on their part or a bit of a strategy. Hopefully not the latter. Shouldn't be.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the justices, on the judge's decision and the justification for it in general?
Well, in the existing law, it's probably a pretty solid decision, and therefore any attempt to appeal it seems to me would be quite difficult. But it's not an absolute given that it had to go that way. A lot of people were saying, well, it was predictable and they never should have brought the charges, those sort of things. I think that's probably correct if you say the law is going to go as it usually goes, but I think there is a way in which the case could have taken a broader definition of consent, which is the key question. The key question was consent. So once she said that she was not very comfortable with the credibility of the complainant, that pretty well sealed the fate right there, because proof in a criminal case, of course, has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. And there's a couple of things. I think the great majority of the public think that they did bad things and wrong, but that doesn't mean that they committed crimes. But they could have, and they could have if this was not real, enthusiastic consent. And I know there was a debate on that, even on the evidence, but I think that's the core question, and it would have been possible for the judge to take a broader view of consent that would have maybe allowed some convictions, but that she did not do. And she spells out clearly and in great detail why she made the decision that she did. And I would say any appeal would be quite a difficult thing. But I guess I'm making the comment that even though that may be right, it's very sad that the chances of a victim of sexual assault is ever going to want to come to before the courts. I believe the statistics are something like 6% of sexual assaults are ever prosecuted, and only a tiny percentage of those ever succeed. So I think that's a real loss here.
Okay, and look, as far as reaction goes from supporters of EM, the alleged victim, and I guess the question is did some good come out of this? At least we were having these conversations, I suppose, right? And that there is some value to this, I think. What are your thoughts?
I absolutely agree with that. I think that even though it wasn't the result that the supporters of EM wanted, or obviously she wanted, but I think it did achieve a lot. It certainly led to a national discussion about these things, sexual assault generally, and how problematic it can be, but perhaps even more specifically about the problematic culture of hockey and junior hockey perhaps in particular, but I think hockey generally. And in that regard, she may have provided a very important contribution, because there's some changes have already been made. Hockey Canada was, in its current form, was disbanded, and hopefully more changes are going to come, because as I indicated, even though they were not found guilty of sexual assault criminally, very few people thought what they did was an appropriate thing. And that's the real test for the professionalism of hockey and the standards of hockey. These are supposed to be role models who have great position and privilege in our society, and to behave like that is completely unacceptable. And it will be very interesting to see if the NHL continues to have its stance that they're still going to be suspended or still not going to be allowed to play, whether that will continue or whether there'll only be a time and then they'll relent on that. I don't know. But I'm really, I guess, supporting your point. I think it was a very useful educational process that would not have got nearly as much attention if there weren't the criminal trial. That criminal trial is a high-profile, big stakes thing that everybody pays attention to. So I think that was a real contribution.
Wayne, always great. Appreciate your insight. Thanks, my friend.
No problem. Take care.
All right, take care. Wayne MacKay, Law Professor Emeritus, Dalhousie University. Tim Powers when we come back. All right, joining us for a weekly chat is Tim Powers, Summa Strategies, Abacus Data, friend of the show. Tim Powers, you're one of only a few people in the media still working in this late in the summer. What's going on? Why are you still working?
I do what Todd Veinotte tells me to do. That and geez, Todd, boy, we've taken some hits this week. Ozzy, Hulk Hogan, for you and I and many others of our vintage, they were front and center in a lot of in our backgrounds, on our screens. I mean, there's obviously more important things that have happened in the world this week, and we'll talk about them. But still, losing a couple of those icons, it's been weird, this week.
Yeah, it has been absolutely strange. Like I said, of our generation, Ozzy was rock royalty, and not only for our generation, but and Hulk Hogan, of course. And the first time I saw Hulk Hogan,
mornings.
The first time I saw Hulk Hogan was Rocky III. Quite honestly,
yeah. Thunderlips.
That's right. And I mean, just towered over Sly Stallone, who from what I heard is not that tall anyway. I think he's only like 5'6" or 5'7". I thought Sly Stallone was a tall guy.
Yeah, apparently he's quite small, but that Rocky III was epic. But yeah, wild week. They were very much central, at least in my youth, as I say, hearing them and watching them and seeing them become legends. But there you go. That's what happens.
Of those Rocky movies, which one was your favorite? I think the first one was the ultimate classic.
I like one, but I'm a sucker for three because you got Clubber Lang in there, and you got all of that, and Mr. T, and that was pretty good, I thought.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, all right. Let's talk. As you mentioned, lots of serious things to talk about. Of course, the dozens of demonstrators turned out after an Ontario Superior Court justice acquitted 5 former members of Canada's World Junior Hockey team of sexual assault. Expected backlash in response. No surprises here, right?
No, I think this is just a tough trial for so many people for so many different reasons. I mean, if you are EM, obviously this is not what you expected. If you're the hockey players, you're glad to be acquitted, and then you've got everybody else, parents, family members, everybody watching, trying to understand, because it gets to there's significant cultural elements to all of this, although the judge, as she said, was not ruling on morality and culture. She was ruling on the facts of the law, but there's particularly lots of sexual assault advocates who wish the way the Canadian courts looked at sexual assault allegations changed. And I just found it very emotional on a number of levels. And as somebody who's in the sports system, I mean, this trial, even before the verdict, has had pronounced impacts for the positive on the sports system in terms of education and safety and awareness and leadership training, and it will continue to do so. And then you think of yourself. Sorry, I'm giving you a long answer, but it really impacted me. The other aspect is, as somebody who's a hockey coach, makes you reflect on everything you do and how you act and the examples you set, because it's clearly extremely important.
Yeah, Adam Van Couverden, of course, weighed in on this. It says the trial of 4 of these junior hockey team has sparked a national conversation about the problematic culture in men's hockey. So I guess, what are your thoughts on the government's role and what it's doing here, or what it can do or should be doing here?
I think it's mostly performed its role. I mean, there were those parliamentary hearings, as you will recall, because the other aspect of this connected to the trial was the payout that Hockey Canada had made in 2019, 2020 to EM to settle this out of court, and people were rightly very angry about how that money was accumulated. They didn't know there was a fund for this, which led to lots of proper questions about, all right, well, what's actually going on inside hockey? Look, it's never we should never get to a place where in a series of incidents like this one that were depicted in the court reporting that drive that. You should always be reflective. But I really don't think the government has more to do here. I think all of us who are part and parcel of sport have to take it on ourselves to be as responsible and informed and engaged and as fair and wise as possible. It's on us. I mean, it's on every coach, it's on every manager, it's on every parent to make sure we are creating the right cultures, safe sport environment for everybody to thrive and prosper, and stamping out dangerous or bad behavior if and when we see it.
Do you think, in particular, amongst junior hockey players and junior hockey teams, that I'm sure that at the beginning of training camp, at some point, the closed door meetings, managers or rather coaches, GMs, whatever, are having conversations with players, saying, "Look, this type of behavior is not acceptable." It goes without saying, and I can't help but think that the conversations are being had to players, very pointed conversations. What are your thoughts?
Well, certainly they are with national teams now, because the Hockey Canada has brought in consent training for anybody who throws on a Canadian jersey, and I think they've gone down into the systems. I would hope that people are taking on that responsibility. I can't speak for individual junior hockey teams. I just know that certainly in the hockey community that I'm part of, that this is front and center, and coaches and parents spend a lot of time talking about and making sure we're modeling the right behavior for athletes.
Okay, the NHL is not allowing them so far, these players, to return to playing in the league. The Players Association is saying that they should be allowed to. What are your thoughts on this in general, I guess, on the NHL sanctioning these players?
Well, they have separate codes of conduct, right? So I think that's fair ball by the NHL right now. I mean, I think at some point they have to be definitive about whether these players are allowed back in or not. The players may have a case at a certain point for legal action to say, hey, look, we were found not guilty, which we think means we should have the opportunity to try and earn a living in the sport again. But I think, for now, the league has to, if it has code of conduct guidelines, they need to follow them and make sure that as it relates to players that may be coming into their space, that they're properly adhered to. It's just what we talked about a moment ago, right? Like, if you have a player who's exhibiting dangerous behavior, inappropriate behavior, he or she may have not done anything criminal yet, but you may still find that not something you want in your work environment, and you have some rights there too. So it's not as easy. I get what the NHLPA is doing. They're doing what they have to do, standing up for players, but I think the NHL is actually right at this moment. Let's take our time and figure this out.
Yeah, I guess my thoughts is that this certainly wasn't the only time. I think it would be safe to so a lot of perhaps hypocrisy going on here amongst the NHL players.
Historical rewriting might be. I mean, look, we saw all that happen right in. Was it Chicago?
Right. Yeah.
That cost Joel Quenneville his job, and others. I mean, look, just I don't want to spread falsehoods, but I think it would be not an unreasonable assumption to guess that there's been other cases that have been extremely questionable behavior that perhaps maybe haven't gotten the same scrutiny they have now, because society's moved, right? And that's important. And sports, and whether you're in sport or in business or whatever, you have to move there too. Yeah, there's some hypocrisy in it, no doubt, but ultimately, if people are safer and people behave better, that should be positive.
Yeah, and I suppose if this would have been a different verdict, we might have seen more victims come forward, and perhaps
Yep.
now conversely we'll see that not happen because of this decision. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be what people who know sexual assault advocacy are saying, and it just on the surface, it would make sense. I mean, I appreciate that the defense lawyers were doing their jobs and, working to determine their clients' interest in innocence and interests. That cross-examination of EM was pretty brutal. Not saying it was wrong, but it was tough. It was hard. Your whole life is ripped open in circumstances like this. So you can understand why people who've been subject to sexual assault don't take it to courts because they don't want to go through what EM went through on the stand.
All right, let's shift gears. Let's talk a bit about what happened with the premiers this week and a meeting, quite a cordial meeting, a bit of a love-in actually. My gosh, kumbaya, right? Let's get back to the 1960s here and the summer of love going on here with these politicians, including the Prime Minister. What the hell's going on, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, geez, Todd, in the summer you could bet on that the federal government would be the piñata and the premiers would whack on them hard, and that was a normal summer ritual. What's gone on, I guess, is Le Grand Orange, Mr. Trump. Everybody's staying on side. I think, even Danielle Smith, who was a little bit further out there a few months ago, has probably recognized that, hey, there isn't a big Canadian will to be offside of what the one team approach at the moment. Doesn't hurt them, right, the premiers, to follow that path, because if all goes to hell, they can then return to normal and blame it on Carney and get back to blaming Ottawa and excusing their own responsibilities. So I think that's why we're seeing this. I think also legitimately it's more helpful. It makes it harder for Trump to cherry pick and say, I'm Prime Minister, look, Danielle Smith told me this, or Tim Houston told me that. You don't have a united team, so.
Is that your best Donald Trump interpretation?
I don't know. It's what you got this morning. It's what you got this morning.
But the loving can't last, right? Obviously, this isn't going to last.
No, Todd. It's only our love that can last, even with our abusive sports talk towards each other. And on that, I know we got to go, but what happened to the Yankees, man? Like, the Blue Jays are on fire. Holy cow.
Yeah, I think the Blue Jays are a little better. I think they're fundamentally a better team, better lineup. That's my take on it. But
I'm going to see him next week against Kansas City, so I'll tell you when I see him.
You're going to see the Blue Jays against Kansas City?
We're taking my son to his first Major League Baseball game next weekend in the long weekend. So
nice.
We're going to see them against Kansas City.
Nice. All right. Enjoy, Tim. Thanks for doing this, pal.
Take care, buddy.
All right, take care. Tim Power, Summa Strategies, Abacus Data, friend of the show. All right, folks, we are going to open the phone lines a little early today because we've got time to do so. And so if you've got something that you'd like to get off your chest or something you'd like to weigh in on, perhaps some things that you heard this week or not heard this week, perhaps some things that you thought I should have been talking about and I haven't been, give us a call at 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. We are opening the phone lines a bit early today. And we're going to keep them open until noon today, 902-405-6000. Get in on the action when we come back.
X.
All right, as mentioned, folks, we got some time for you. We're opening the phone lines a little early today, 902-405-6000. If you'd like to get in on the fun, get in on the action, whatever you'd like to talk about, give us a call at 902-405-6000. Of course, this trial that we've been talking about a lot, an acquittal for the 5 junior hockey players acquitted of sexual assault. What are your thoughts on this, folks? What is your opinion on the ruling? What is your opinion of the players? Does this acquittal matter as to how you feel about the players? For some people, they feel as though that justice has not been served. Others say, look, there was a trial, and the judge, unprejudiced judge, rendered a decision, and that's the law, and that should be accepted. What are your thoughts on this, folks? Is this type of behavior more common than we would like to think it is, in particular amongst athletes and in particular elite athletes? 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Should these players be allowed to play again in the NHL? Because as of now, the NHL, it says no. They are not allowed to play. In a statement, the allegations in the case, they say that were disturbing, if not determined criminal. And the league also calls the behavior at issue unacceptable. The NHL Players Association says the acquitted players should have the opportunity to return to work. So, should the NHL players be allowed to play again in the NHL? Based on the acquittal, they did not break the law, according to the judge. Again, after a lengthy trial and lengthy testimony, including a long testimony by the alleged victim. So what are your thoughts on this, folks? 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Or whatever else you have in your mind. Getting quite a bit of feedback on this story about this United States country singer who was set to perform in Halifax this week, and it was the permit was revoked last minute. The Parks Canada to play at the Parks Canada location here in Halifax. And again, a lot of feedback on this, folks, and many people, I'll be honest with you, have said that they don't agree with it. They feel as though freedom of speech has been violated, and that this is cancel culture, and it's unfair. People say, look, I don't agree with what he has to say, or what his views are on LGBTQ rights or abortion, or many other issues, including his political persuasion. He's of course a mega supporter. But again, people have said that despite all of that, freedom of speech and freedom of expression still should be upheld, and it has not been upheld. Do you agree with that? Again, lots to talk about that this week, and his concerts have been canceled in other venues in Canada as well, including Prince Edward Island and Quebec, and I do believe, I think New Brunswick might have canceled a show as well. So what is your take on that? 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. And of course, always something that people are talking about here in the city is our council and our mayor, Andy Fillmore, and at odds with the rest of council, or I shouldn't say the rest of council, much of council. I saw this story on the CBC website this morning. Some Halifax councillors say Mayor Andy Fillmore's comments about the roles of mayor and the city's top bureaucrat are disconcerting and amount to misinformation. Mayor Fillmore has said the current municipal structure is blocking him from fixing issues he was elected to work on, like traffic congestion and affordability. To address that, Fillmore told CBC's Maritime Noon on Tuesday he would welcome so-called strong mayor powers if granted by the province, which would allow him to hire and fire the chief administrative officer for Halifax. Here's a quote from the mayor. Says, the CAO holds the power. In our organizational chart, I report to the CAO, he said. But multiple councillors in the current CAO immediately refuted that statement, including Councillor Patty Cuddle, who says, I think it's always unfortunate when people spread misinformation, particularly someone who's supposed to be a trusted public figure. Wow. It says, she went on to say, it confuses the public, and I think it drives polarization and really does a disservice to the governance of our city, close quote. So really, really at odds here, folks, members of council and the mayor. And I will say one thing about Mike Savage is that we didn't see this type of flux with or consternation or confrontation with Mike Savage. Mike Savage seemed to have the ability to kind of corral council, and look, some would say that's a good thing, some would say that that's a bad thing. But what are your thoughts on this continuing battle between Mayor Fillmore and much of the rest of council as the war continues to enlarge here, folks? Do you support Andy Fillmore? Do you think that the CAO and staff has had too much power in this city and too much influence over council in this city? Because, look, I've had many calls over the years where people have said that they feel as though staff runs the city and has far too much influence and far too much say over council. And I've had many people say that in fact, council should have more control and more power over staff. And here's Andy Fillmore wanting to fill that role with being empowered by strong mayor powers, which has to come from the provincial government, of course. And I think it's a done deal. I think you're going to see probably the one of the first items of business when the Ledge reconvenes in the fall, that Premier Tim Houston and a supermajority will pass an amendment to the Halifax Charter and grant the mayor strong mayor powers. I think that is a done deal. So what are your thoughts on that, or anything else you got in your mind? As mentioned, we've got time for you folks. We got an open hour. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Your calls when we come back.
Axe.
All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Quick email from Tim, then we'll go to the phone. Tim says, the more Andy Fillmore speaks and whines about his lack of power, the more he proves he is not a leader. Just because certain people like Chris call every day to fuel Fillmore's narrative, it doesn't mean they should carry the day any more than Fillmore's designed to be an autocrat. There is an erosion of democracy. Comes from Tim. Oh, all right, folks. What is on your mind today? Give us a call, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Mike's giving us a call. Hello, Mike.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm well, you?
Good, very good, Todd. The mayor and the half-wit council. Andy's actually the first mayor in a little while that's got any balls to deal with the issues that all of HRM is dealing with, not just the peninsula. Now, the councillor that was yapping about the mayor and stuff, well, she's the least liked councillor and the most invisible councillor in the system. The other thing, I would like to see someone do a private audit on all the councillors that voted against the mayor and see how many of them are getting funds from the cycling group and the Ecology Action Center. Because it seems to me that those are the folks that are deciding what should be done.
What do you mean getting funds? Like you're talking illegal funds? Is that what your accusation is?
Yeah, they're being supported. When they do election, they get support from these people.
Well, we don't know that.
If that's the case, I know, that's what I'm saying. It should be an audit, because if that's the case, then who's running who?
Well, Mike, how about developers funding certain politicians, okay, right? That's equally as bad, if not more so, is it not?
Well, no, because these people are elected.
No, but I'm saying if developers support Andy Fillmore or whomever, which has happened in the past, that developers have supported certain members of council or a mayor, including I think Mike Savage, then is that as distasteful as if a coalition if a cycling coalition backed a councillor? Yep,
that's what I'm looking at. Is that if a group of people who want something that desperately, all of the what I call the Tour de France wannabes, to get the bike lanes all over the place so they can ride, and the indications are that if you want your area paved, it has to come with bike lanes. Purcell's Cove Road has been paved in 2 sections. Neither one of them required the full paving, but it was all because they wanted to put wider bike lanes there. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm old. I drove a bike from Cowie Hill over to Dartmouth 5 days a week, back and forth. There weren't any bike lanes. There's common sense. And that seems to have disappeared.
Okay, Mike, appreciate the call. 902-405-6000. John, hello.
Hello, Todd. How are you today? Nice, beautiful day.
Yeah.
I just want to make two quick, statements. That first of all, when I watched the premiers that had this meeting up in, where was it, in Ontario? I guess with
Ontario. Yeah.
And it seemed to me like even though he was the biggest province in Canada, he seems to be the one that Ford seems to be the one that's running the whole show. The other thing is watching them outside and watching them, they look like they were having a vacation more than dealing with the important things that had to be dealt with. I don't know, but that's what it seemed to me when I watched them. I don't think anything came out of that meeting whatsoever, personally. The other thing I want to make mentions to is this fellow that has had his revival or whatever revoked. What happened to the freedom of speech in our country? And I'm not saying I'm in favor of this man, what he says, but you take all the churches in Halifax and in Canada that really preach this almost the same thing as he is against. Would that mean they should close all these churches too? I just think that it would have been great, let him have his thing down in the reduced place and just see how many people actually go to it. I think the freedom of speech seems to be disappearing in our country. Anyway, that's my statement on today.
Okay, thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Give us a call. We've got lots of open lines for you. Want to hear from you. What's your opinion on some of this stuff, folks? I think that there's a freedom of speech conversation that's worthy of being had about this. I mean, I don't support his views at all when it comes to his social views on abortion and gay rights and other social issues. I don't support them at all. I don't support the MAGA movement at all. Now, that said, does he have the right to say them and do other people have the right to express them and to share them? I would say yes. He has that right to do so. He's not breaking any laws. To my knowledge, it doesn't wander into hate speech, although some of you might suggest that it does. Now, the fact that it was at a national park, does that play into it? Because some would say that was at the crux of this. If this concert was not at a national park in Halifax, it would not have got the attention that it gotten because it likely would not have had its permit revoked, because why would it have? He did go on to perform at another venue in the province. So is that the crux of it, that it was at a national park? And does the federal government have some responsibility and role to be the moral compass for the country and for this type of thing by allowing this type of show at a national park? 902-405-6000. Kevin, what's on your mind today?
Hey, just wanted to say that I agree with the cancellation of that musician that wanted to play in a federal park. As much as I like freedom of speech, that I think most Canadians want to stay as part of Canada. They want to keep Canada going. They don't want. I think that's a large majority. So I think that letting a guy like that perform in national parks is just like kind of setting oneself up for a kick in the kahunas. I don't like getting kicked in the kahunas, and I don't want to, set my country up for failure. But freedom of speech, maybe in other locations and that, maybe that is, a thing that could go over okay. But now as far as the hockey guys go, I think the NHL probably made a good decision there because, Todd, weren't they those players? They were found not guilty, or they weren't convicted of doing sexual crimes against that victim, that girl.
Yeah.
And but they did participate in some kind of orgy, did they not?
Yes,
Like
they did. Yeah. If you want to use that term, group sex, whatever term you want to use, yeah.
Yeah. Now, if they would have done that at home, or if they would have done that, at a motel room, away from that hockey road trip or whatever that was, maybe that might have been acceptable. But when they're doing that, and in a way that's sort of representing hockey, that's involved with hockey, I think the NHL has a really good right, to put a stop to that and send a message to parents and players and all that in the future that, hey, that they're not going to stand for that, and that if they just let that go, that very well could pyramid, and things could go to hell even more in a handbasket. Anyway, that's what I got to say.
Okay, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Well, look. What do I think? I think that there's a lot of hypocrisy going on when it comes to the NHL and its stance on this, because that this is not the only time this type of thing has happened, and look, it's I understand that. I think that these players, these men's reputation has taken a big hit, and I don't feel bad for them at all. It should be, but that said, think about the amount of people that have done this and have not been exposed and have not. We don't know about it, and there's a lot of hypocrisy going on here. I think that on behalf of the NHL.
You know what, Todd? Maybe they should be told that they have to perform some kind of community service, and then if they perform their community service for a couple of years or something, then maybe they will get a trial by the NHL. You know what I mean? And go in front of a committee. Yeah. And then they might get a second chance. So leave it up in the air for now. Yeah. Then if they because I guess at that age, you were that age once, so was I. And at that age in particular, your hormones, the male hormones are going crazy, So
that can't be an excuse anymore, though, Kevin. That's not a justifiable excuse. Not.
All right.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the call. All right.
Thanks a lot, Todd.
All right. Take care. 902-405-6000. Look, folks, I think that the NHL is going to make an example of these guys, and they are making an example of these guys. But there's lots of hypocrisy going on, in my opinion, here with this whole thing, because that this type of behavior this was not a one-off. This type of behavior is if not now, perhaps it's not as much now because people are on notice. But this has been probably rampant among sport culture, I would dare say. And the NHL, I suppose, can make these people a sacrificial lamb, I suppose. 902-405-6000, that's the way to reach us. What's your take on this or anything else you got in your mind? Again, 902-405-6000. The open hour continues when we come back.
Facts.
All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Quick email from Paul and back to the phones. Paul says, was the American performer guilty of any crime, or did he just have opinions that are outside the mainstream? I advocate for freedom of speech, reason, and tolerance. Just because I disagree with what you say, you still should be allowed to express your opinion. I'd rather have opinions out in the open than have them driven underground. Comes from Paul. 902-405-6000. Greg's giving us a call. Hello, Greg.
How you doing, Todd?
I'm well, you?
Good. Just a comment about these hockey players. I mean, I guess now the NHL is going to do something, but it seems to me, they were found not guilty. Okay?
Yeah.
All right? And the judge talked about misconception, some of the testimony from her. There was holes here, holes there. I can't see how the NHL is gonna penalize these guys, because first of all, the NHL Players Association said they can't do this. If somebody was found guilty, I can understand wholeheartedly, but this way they were found not guilty, and that's going to mean something as far as I'm concerned. Now, like you said, is this the first time? Not the first time this happened? No, probably not.
No,
May
absolutely
not.
not. We know that it's not, right?
Yeah, but like I said, it's something that's there, and she had her day in court. They were there, and was not guilty. I mean, listening to the judge say that there were just so many inconsistencies, and she wasn't believable. There was all kinds of stuff. Now you're gonna convict somebody on just that? No, you can't. It's just not going to work. But again, the NHL going to make an example of them. Well, I can't see how they can if they were found not guilty. If they were found guilty of something, that's a different story.
Well, I suppose
again,
now that said, the NHLPA or the NHL can suspend players for reasons that aren't criminal, right? They've done it in the past. So they could deem it conduct unbecoming of some type, which obviously that's what they're referencing, and suggest that. Now legally, I don't know, Greg. Maybe perhaps the players can sue the NHL in civilian court or something, or civil lawsuit for not allowing them to play. And perhaps that might be happening, or sue them for damages. It could happen.
But the thing is, though, Todd. It's the Players Association said there's a bargaining agreement that deals with this stuff, okay? And I think they're saying that they're jumping the gun too fast here, right? Which may be true because the collective agreement that they all agreed on deals with this stuff, right? So now I don't know. It'd be interesting to see, but I don't think they're going to be able to not allow these people to play it because it's just they got maybe not much to stand on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Been interested to see, but I agree with you. Something, this has got to stop type of thing. And I think it starts in the junior ranks when you have to start telling people, okay, this is not going to be tolerated. If not, you're out the door. That sort of thing, or whatever. So.
Okay, Greg. Appreciate the call. Take care.
Thanks.
All right, 902-405-6000. Marco, hello.
Hey, Todd. How are you, Bill?
Well, you.
Todd, you know what? The guy that just called in, I pretty much agree with everything he's saying. I believe that when the charges were laid, I don't know if the players were all let go from their organizations or whether the NHL put sanctions on them, and they were all, but all those guys were left unemployed. Now that this come this point, like. That Carter Hart's got like 6 years in as an NHL goalie, and I think would be a no question teams are calling on him. But I would think that I remember back to the Logan Mailloux kid, the kid in Montreal that got drafted with the sex pictures in Sweden. It was about a year before the London information come out, and he went through programming and counseling, and he met all conditions, and he was reinstated and is now back in the NHL, and I think he just traded not that long ago, and is a top prospect. So I'm anticipating that those players will be back in the NHL very soon. Anyway, that's just my opinion. It sure is a tough situation, but they were found not guilty, and I just think that's how that's going to go. That's all I have to say. Go Jays, and thanks for taking my call.
Okay, thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. What is on your mind, too? Get open lines for you folks. Give us a call. Again, 902-405-6000. Again, I think that it's just pretty evident to me that these players are going to be and are being made an example of by the NHL. And is that right or wrong? Look, I suppose it depends on your opinion, right? I see both sides of it. I can see the argument that look, they were acquitted. They did not break the law, according to a long trial and the verdict from a judge. So therefore, let them play. That said, though, look, was their conduct unbecoming or was it distasteful? I suppose it depends on your opinion. In my opinion, yes, it absolutely was. It was distasteful. And their reputations have been permanently impacted by this. I mean, these players, if they do reemerge in the NHL, will always wear this, always. Now, some people will be forgiving, and look, we know that's sport culture, right? that people are quick to forgive celebrities, not just sports. Look at pop culture in general. Look at Hulk Hogan, who just passed away. He was controversial, went on a racist tirade. I mean, Michael Jackson, for goodness sakes, Michael Jackson and his background, that he's still revered and spoken of very fondly, and his music still plays all over the world on radio stations and download streams and Spotify and all that stuff. So again, people admire and for whatever reason are quick to forgive celebrities and people who do extraordinary things, whether it be athletes or celebrities. Why is that? Why are we so quick to forgive and to forget when it comes to bad behavior and celebrities? That perhaps is a bigger question. Like Hulk Hogan. Like Michael Jackson. Not to say that Michael Jackson and Hulk Hogan are in the same category. Michael Jackson for different reasons. But if Michael Jackson and his checkered past and all that goes with it, if he weren't who he is, would he be revered? Absolutely not. He would be disdained and shunned by society. 902-405-6000, that's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Michael's giving us a call. Hello, Michael.
And how are you this morning?
I'm well, you?
Good. I'm calling in about the hockey players and their trial. I'm a retired lawyer. I do a fair amount of criminal work in my time.
Okay.
I'm concerned is the public attitude. These 5 boys were charged with very serious criminal offenses. And they mounted a defense and went through a complicated trial that saw 2 juries dismissed, and the judge took over. And the judge, you listened to her decision, gave a very reasoned decision, and found them not guilty. But my concern is that you listen to people, that doesn't seem to mean anything, a finding of not guilty. Oh, well, we know they did it anyway. The fact is they're found not guilty, and that should be the end of it. As to their sexual mores and their private life, I'm not going to be judgmental on that. As far as the NHL, we all know they're concerned about gate receipts and worried about if they play, will there be protests, and it'll affect how many attend the games. I would suggest that's where their thoughts are. They're not worried about moral turpitude. But anyway, there was a fair trial. They mounted a good defense with excellent defense lawyers. Mm-hmm. The Crown didn't prove their case. Mm-hmm. The judge said it was a weak case to begin with, and they're found not guilty.
Were you surprised? Were you surprised, Mike, that the trial was even taken on by the prosecution at that, based on what you said?
Well, what reading I've done, the London police initially did an investigation and did not lay any charges. Then we had when it was disclosed Hockey Canada had paid the young lady $1.4 million, and then all the politicians got involved, and then there's a big uproar. You remember all that about Hockey Canada, and I can't help but think there's pressure exerted on the London police to lay the charges. Basically, let the judge decide, which is dangerous. If there's not a strong case, or if there's not a strong likelihood of conviction. Mm-hmm. Or a reasonable likelihood of conviction, it's not in the public interest to proceed. You listen to the judge's decision, the Crown had a weak case. And it's dangerous to proceed with weak cases because the Crown's job is to present the case fairly. Mm-hmm. You proceed with weak cases, you could end up with miscarriages of justice. Like look at Assume, spent 17 years in jail for something he didn't do. Mm-hmm. It's a serious game, and criminal trial is not a pillow fight. And with these young boys, the consequences would be horrendous. And they're found not guilty. So my take on it, if they're found not guilty, that's it. They're found not guilty, unless it's appealed and there's a new trial order. Then they get to do it all over again. Mm. But as to the moral turpitude, I'm not judging them. That's their own moral standards. The young lady, we don't know really. Judge heard what said was happened. Judge came to a decision. found her evidence very lacking and found him not guilty. And don't forget, reasonable doubts in favor of the accused, you're innocent until proven guilty, and the Crown can't. That onus is always on the Crown.
So Mike, I guess though it's predictable that there would be this visceral reaction from so many people though when you're dealing with the subject matter that we're dealing with, and we know that it takes a lot of courage for victims to come forward. Just 6% do, and of that 6%, a smaller percent would get a conviction. So I suppose I understand where you're coming from, and your kind of level-headed approach to this. And interpreting the law as you do, coming from your background, but do you I guess empathize or understand why some people have a different reaction than you?
Yeah, I can see some people have a different reaction. I know some people, close friends of mine, have a different reaction because they can't grasp the thought that some people, put a blunt layer, in the group sex. I mean, after 46 years of practicing law, I've seen it all, and like nothing shocks me anymore. But some people just can't get their head around that. Some people are morally offended by it, and it doesn't have to be criminal to be morally offended. So my concern is like after the Ghomeshi trial, the federal government changed the rules of evidence for cross-examination. So I hope there's no big changes here, just so that makes convictions easier. I mean, as a Marshall inquiry found, as stated in the beginning, that we have a criminal justice system, not a criminal conviction system. And that was actually stated in the Marshall inquiry. Or as the Court of Appeal said that. Anyway, that was stated. That was many years ago.
Okay, Mike, appreciate your call. Thanks for your comments.
Well, thank you for your time.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Jeremy, hello.
Hi, Todd. Happy Friday.
Yeah, indeed. I'm well, you?
You made a comment about why people give celebrities or sports stars a pass. I got a thought on that. I think it really comes down to people having an interest or an investment in them, right? Whether that's in them personally, the team, the music. Same thing as a family member. If a family member does something wrong, chances are you don't want to see that person punished because you have an investment. A sports star is going to make the playoffs. You don't want to see them punished because you're going to transfer your team to win. I think it really just comes down to, are you willing to overlook bad deeds because it's going to affect you in some way? And I think I'm generalizing, but I think mainly that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, okay, Jeremy. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. 902-405-6000. Janet, hello.
Hello.
Hi there. Go ahead.
I think this is a matter of showing that the trial procedures are flawed. And the issue was informed consent, that it was believed that this woman consented to this. Now, in my opinion, that's not normal human behavior for a woman to consent to something like that, unless, of course, we've heard that prostitutes will agree to do that if you pay them some money. Now, that's the only time that I understand that sort of thing will take place, and our society accepts that, and then they just move along. Now, this woman was also not credible, but that's because they were lacking in evidence. And to me, this is just another example of a very flawed legal system that bullies the victim. And that's my opinion about that.
Okay, appreciate the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. What's your take on this? Getting some interesting comments on this, folks. And look, I welcome all of them, of course. And your feedback is interesting, for sure. Gary says this via email. And again, we got some open lines for you folks. Give us a call. Gary says this is first of all, I have an issue with the hockey players' actions, full stop. Since the judge's verdict yesterday, many comments, opinions I believed are based on emotion, not facts. Many saying the players' actions were despicable, and hopefully this will be a wake-up call for coaches, organizations, parents, etc. This I agree with. Now, this won't be politically correct, but What about EM's actions? The judge was clear in her deliberations. EM's testimony was largely not credible or reliable, and she acted as the sexual aggressor, egging the men on, demanding they have sex with her. So couldn't her actions be despicable, and why aren't people talking about a wake-up call for young women? That comes from Gary. Again, not my comments, Gary's comments. And this is what the show is about, folks. It's about opinion. 902-405-6000. Owen's giving us a call. Owen, you want to talk about the canceled concert? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, first of all, did they actually perform somewhere else in Nova Scotia?
I believe they did, yes.
Okay. Don't take me wrong. It's not that I condone their values or what they're trying to promote, but my interest is freedom of speech. It's very scary. It seems like we're walking down a very fine line of what's censored, not censored, so on and so forth.
Yeah, okay.
So if you're going to start, and I agree with the cancellation in Halifax because they knew that there's a lot of people around and security and the amount of people that we have to enforce an event that large. I totally understand that. It does bother me, freedom of speech. But if they did get to play somewhere else in Nova Scotia, well, then I guess freedom of speech is open.
Well, some would say that it was freedom of speech was not open because it was canceled from at its original venue because of the subject matter and because of who it was.
Yes, and I do agree with that because I don't think we have the forces to exercise anything that could have gone on there. But it seems kind of sad that, and as I said, I don't agree with his views. It seems kind of sad, though, that you have to go somewhere else, and it's just scary walking down a fine line of almost starting to remind me of China.
Yeah. Okay, Owen, appreciate the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Give us a call, folks. We've got some open lines for you. Get some room to the top of the hour as well. 902-405-6000. What is on your mind today? Again, open lines for you. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, give us a call, 902-405-6000. A reminder, of course, we'll have our counselors on the hot seat on Monday. And let me have a sneak peek here. Tony Mancini and Becky Kent will join us. And we'll have Mayor Andy Fillmore here in studio on the 7th of August as well, from 10 until 11. So taking your calls, and I'm sure that there will be lots and lots and lots of conversation and lots of interest when Andy Fillmore is in studio here, and Strong Mayor Powers will be the main point of conversation, I'm sure, because this is something that is impacting or could potentially impact the city in a pretty big time way. I talked about this story earlier, and perhaps some of you might want to weigh in on it again if you want to continue to talk about the decision by the justice in Ontario concerning the Hockey Canada players, the acquittal of the 5 players. Lots of good chat on that. Lots of good points so far today. And we've got some time for you and some room for you as well. Again, 902-405-6000. Or, of course, you can continue to talk about the canceled concert and the other canceled concerts in PEI in Quebec City and other venues in Canada of this American performer with controversial views, depending on, I guess, your viewpoint. Some wouldn't say they're controversial, but I think for the most part, we would agree that they create controversy anyway. Is freedom of expression and freedom of speech, has it been compromised as a result of the permit to being revoked to perform here in Halifax? Again, you can continue to talk about those things, or again, we get some room for you and time for you if you want to talk about Mayor Andy Fillmore and the fact that some Halifax councillors, again, this on the CBC website this morning, say Fillmore's comments about the role of mayor and the city's top bureaucrats are disconcerting and amount to misinformation. Mayor Fillmore has said the current municipal structure is blocking him from fixing issues he was elected to work on, like traffic congestion and affordability. To address that, Fillmore told CBC's Maritime Noon on Tuesday that he would welcome so-called strong mayor powers if granted by the province, which would allow him to hire and fire the chief administrative officer for Halifax. The CAO holds the power in our organizational chart. I report the CAO. That's a quote from the mayor. Multiple councillors in the current CAO immediately refuted that statement, including Patty Cuttle. And here's a quote from Patty Cuttle, who's a councillor, of course, says, "I think it's always unfortunate when people spread misinformation, particularly someone who's supposed to be a trusted public figure. It confuses the public, and I think it drives polarization and really does a disservice to the governance of our city." Close quote. In an email statement Wednesday to the mayor and council obtained by CBC News, CAO Kathy O'Toole said she wanted to offer factually correct information on the issue, saying she had been contacted by multiple people about Fillmore's comments. A quote from that email: "The mayor is part of a regional council. The CAO reports to mayor and council per the employment contract. The mayor does not report to the CAO. CAO does not hold the power. Mayor and council do," O'Toole wrote. So what are your thoughts on that, folks? Again, continued controversy swirling around this council. 902-405-6000. Scott wants to talk about the canceled concert. Hello, Scott.
Hi, Todd. How are you this morning?
I'm well, you?
Good, thank you. Listen, as far as I'm concerned, Halifax is a very progressive, open-minded, inclusive city. And I would think, if you can close streets for the, a huge gay pride parade, you could certainly open up a venue for Christian music. If we're going to be inclusive, let's include everything. And I think York Reed out for a site would be easy as far as security goes. I mean, there's only one entrance in, one entrance out, so I think it would be pretty easy to control. But that's just my take on it. I mean, if we want to include all sides, because otherwise, if we don't, it just becomes divisive. So that's my take on it, Todd.
Okay, Scott. Fair enough. Thanks for the call. You. Take care. Okay. 902-405-6000. Lynn's giving us a call. Hello, Lynn.
Hi there. Thanks very much for taking my call.
Sure.
I have both personal and professional experience with sexual assault as a survivor myself and as a physician who works with survivors. And I am quite disappointed with the outcome of the trial. Although I do not have a legal background, I can understand the limitations when it comes to assessing credibility. You have on one side a group of 5 young men. Let's stop calling them boys. They're young men. If we're able to call her a young lady, we can call them men. So you have 5 young men who can corroborate together and come to some agreement on what happened amongst themselves versus one young woman who was intoxicated and was not capable of consent. Without any moral judgment whatsoever, I find it very difficult to believe that a woman would be comfortable consenting in a room with up to 10 strangers, most of whom did not know her own name. So I am quite frustrated with this outcome and how that's being interpreted.
Lynn, what about the burden of proof, though, and the judge and her decision? I'm sure she did not take it lightly, obviously. And what about the fact that the burden of proof was not met, at least according to the justice?
So I see I do see your point, and certainly I have not read the transcripts, and nor do I know if they aren't even ready yet. When it comes to burden of proof, one of the challenges is that this young woman did report this to the police. I'm not sure exactly how long after the alleged assault, but it was closed and declined to be fully investigated until it was reopened after the civil suit involving Hockey Canada. That's my understanding. I could be missing some of the details, the chronology. But when it comes to burden of proof in he said, she said, or they said, she said sort of cases, it's incredibly challenging. But I would like listeners to imagine or think about what gain did this young woman have in agreeing to go further with a criminal case. What gain? Further trauma? 9 days of witnessing testimony and interrogation and whatnot? She had already received a settlement. Do you see what I mean, though? Like, there's no gain for her to go through this again and be traumatized again. So something that I would appreciate if people pondered on a bit further. That's my take.
Yeah, for sure. I understand what you're saying. I guess when all is said and done, I'm not sure if obviously having a judge alone make the verdict or deliver a decision. I think it was obviously it benefited the players in hindsight. Perhaps a jury would have been different, but two juries were dismissed for various reasons, which was strange as well. So that was unfortunate as well, I think.
I completely agree with you, Todd. I do think, and not to malign the judge in any way, I doubt that this was intentional in any way, but I do believe that having the judge decide the final ruling was to the player's benefit. I don't know why those two juries were dismissed. I wonder possibly if some of the jurors were dismissed because they had disclosed prior experience, either direct or amongst loved ones' experience with sexual assault. When you look at the statistics, and I appreciate, Todd, you mentioning the statistics of the percentage that come forward and the percentage of those that actually go to trial and those that end up resulting in guilty verdicts. Whereas the percentage of women who have experienced sexual assault in Canada is 1/4 to 1/3 of women. So if that's the factor that could be possibly impacting jury pool, I think that's a disservice of justice as well. Because victims, their loved ones, or survivors, and their loved ones are our peers. They're our community, and they should be able to participate in trials like this as well.
Okay, Lynn, listen, I appreciate your comments. Thanks for the call.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care. All right, thanks for the calls, everybody. We appreciate it very much. We'll open the phone lines again on Monday between 11 until 12. Uniting for Nature with a fun scavenger hunt. The 5th annual Big Backyard Bio Blitz goes next week. We'll talk about this when we come back. From balconies to backwoods, a cross-country nature challenge is calling on people to document the species they encounter and help scientists monitor biodiversity across the country. The Big Backyard Bio Blitz, hosted by Nature Conservancy of Canada, returns for the 5th year, July 28th through August 4th. Joining us to discuss all of this is Andrew Holland, National Media Relations Director with the Nature Conservancy of Canada, and unfortunately a Red Sox fan as well. Right, Andrew?
Right out of the gate. How are you doing?
Well, my Yankees aren't doing much better than the Red Sox right now. So
they're kicking the ball around. At least up in Toronto, they were for sure.
They were. Yeah, the Blue Jays look pretty good, eh? I mean, got to give them credit.
Yeah, they're playing good defense, and they're a scrappy ball team. They don't hit a lot of home runs, but running the bases well, and they're manufacturing runs. And they got those veteran starters like Bassett, Barrios, Gosman, that, they're durable.
Scherzer.
They seem to be healthy.
Scherzer.
Yeah, Scherzer too.
Yeah.
And this Lauer guy last night. So, so they're in the mix for sure.
Yeah, and Springer is got a good veteran presence there. He hits some key home runs. You got Vladdy, and Bo Bichette is hitting the ball okay. So, anyway, I think the Blue Jays right now, if I had to call it, I'd say they'll win the East.
and they're exciting a lot of people. You notice the mood in the country has changed, and you see it on TV, at least through the ballpark, and the audience, the crowd, and it's good to see. Even though I'm a Red Sox fan, grew up as a victim of regional coverage, watching them on WLBZ Channel 2 and Bangor coming up the coast. It's good to see. It's good ball.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about the fifth annual Big Backyard BioBlitz.
Yeah, it's a fun event. It started in 2020, back at a time during the pandemic when we were listening to the respective chief medical officers of health telling us to stay in our bubble and stay around home. And we figured this would be a fun thing for people to do, give them something positive, learn about nature in their own subdivisions or backyards, and give folks something positive to do together. And it was super popular. People really liked it. They submitted photos. So that was the test to show this is worth doing. So we launched it officially in 2021. This is the fifth annual year. And for this year, Todd, what we're doing was we're expanding it for a full week to enable more offices and workplaces to go out on lunch hours or coffee breaks to be a team building exercise, but also for summer camps and daycares to let more of these places get out with kids, and just a good activity for all ages.
All right, so how does it work? Let everybody know kind of the details. What are the hopes?
Well, basically you register at backyardbioblitz.ca, and from there people get an email with all the directions, and you download an app called iNaturalist. You can use it on your phone or you can put it on your computer. From there, you just take photos, and there's great tips on how to take good photos and angling them and whatnot. And you take photos of the plants and animals that you see. It could be something on the way to work or at the bus stop or along the trail or in a local park. Halifax Wilderness Park, for example, that the Nature Conservancy of Canada has, or Musquodoboit Harbor, where the NCC has lots of sites, or places where you're vacationing, camping. You take a photo, and the system, this iNaturalist app, it has artificial intelligence in it. So it can help you identify what bird or tree it is. If you don't know what kind of bird or tree it is, the app will help identify it for you. So it's very user-friendly.
Okay, so what advice do you give to people when it comes to discerning what to take a photo of, or what should interest them or not?
Well, we're looking for things that advance conservation efforts, so turtles, or if it's bigger animals, keep back from a safe distance. You don't want to be charging up to moose or anything like that. But this is for plants and trees and shrubs. And the value that this provides is for conservation groups like Nature Conservancy of Canada and others, and other land use managers, really. Municipalities is tracking where plants and animals are moving in terms of migration patterns, or in a lot of areas, Todd, in the Maritimes, invasive plants or invasive species are cropping up along rivers' edges and waterways and along trails and roadsides. And in some cases, municipalities and others aren't necessarily aware of where these are popping up. And so by uploading these photos to the average person, they just see that, oh, it's a nice plant and it's purple and it looks attractive. You don't know if it's native or non-native. A lot of people don't know. Well, by uploading a photo, you're sharing that information with land use managers who can tell, oh, there's an infestation of this invasive plant. It's out-competing native trees and shrubs for sunlight and water, and it's crowding out actual critters like animals that need to move around because it takes up a lot of space. So this helps inform land use managers that these invasive plants have to be removed. So you're doing a civic duty in some ways as well.
Yeah, for sure. And once you have all the information, all the data, then what do you do with it?
Well, Nature Conservancy of Canada staff pore over it to see what has been submitted around our conservation areas. So it helps in Nova Scotia, where are plants and animals moving in close proximity to our nature reserves, whether it's in northern Nova Scotia along the Chignecto Isthmus, the famous Moose Sex corridor, or Pugwash area, or Tatamagouche, or down in the South Shore where the Nature Conservancy of Canada does a lot of work, in Port Les Bears, Port Joli, Liverpool areas, protecting coastal shoreline areas. So we look at the data to see what's showing up in close proximity to where we work, where we currently have lands through land donations or purchases, and see, okay, there's a need to acquire more lands or talk to more landowners to help inform where we can maybe expand conservation efforts.
Okay, so just a reminder to give everybody where they can get all the details if they're interested and they want to take part.
Yeah, backyardbioblitz.ca is the website. It starts Monday. It goes right through the long weekend, and this can be for anybody. You don't need to be a bird nerd or a plant nerd or a biologist. This is for people from all ages. I cheat, Todd. I've got a bird feeder in my backyard, so I see blue jays there and yellow goldfinches and cardinals and black-capped chickadees. I just point my iPhone. I have this app downloaded. You take a picture of it. Even if I didn't know the name of the bird, the app itself will give you the name of it. It'll say, this looks like a chickadee. You say, okay, and then you submit it. And what happens, Todd, is people will see what you posted. So researchers and other experts can see what you posted and confirm what it is that you uploaded for a plant, a tree, a shrub, a bird, an insect, you name it. So you'll get, within 48 hours, people will confirm what you saw. So it's a great learning activity as well.
Okay, Andrew, always great. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
All right, take care. Andrew Holland, he's the National Media Relations Director with the Nature Conservancy of Canada. Nova Scotia looks to become an offshore energy superpower. More talk about this week from Tim Houston. And we'll break all this down when we come back.
X.
All right, the Nova Scotia government continuing to talk about Tim Houston talking about a major energy provider with this Wind West project. Tim Houston talked about it again this week during the Premier's meeting and the meeting with the Prime Minister, of course. So how realistic is Wind West? And joining us to get to some of the details on all of this, Larry Hughes, Dalhousie University engineering professor, whose area of expertise includes energy systems and climate change. Larry, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate it as always.
Oh, sure, Todd.
All right, so Wind West, if it gets off the ground, it could cover as much as 25% of the nation's energy needs.
First correction, electricity needs.
Okay, all right.
Because there's oil in gas as well. So, and people do get confused.
Sorry, Larry, your connection's not very good there.
Oh, shit. Damn.
Are you all right?
I'm fine. Its connection is poor. Hang on.
Okay. All right.
Okay, I'm outside in the wilds of Nova Scotia.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So repeat what you were saying. There's a difference between electricity and energy. Get into that again, please.
People conflate the two when they say it will meet 1/4 of Canada's energy need. No, it's equivalent to about energy consumption, because energy also includes oil, natural gas, wood, and so forth.
Okay, all right. So that said, what are your thoughts on how realistic this plan would be to produce 66 gigawatts of power? Oh, and of course, Nova Scotia would, at its coldest day of the year, at maximum would need 2.4 gigawatts. So lots of surplus there. How realistic is this? That first of all, we could produce this type of power. So let's deal with that first off.
Okay, we're talking about offshore, and the reason we're talking offshore is onshore wind has a problem, and that is hills, buildings. These disrupt the flow of wind. If you can get offshore, you'll get a much better production, and hence the interest in the offshore thing. Second, the Premier in his original home video talked about 66 gigawatts. There seemed to be some confusion on his part because it's actually, now we're being told, 40 gigawatts of wind capacity. Now, what 40 gigawatts means, 40,000, make sure you get the numbers right, 40,000 1-megawatt turbines. So it's 40,000 megawatts. And that is clearly a very large number because Nova Scotia's capacity is about 2,000 megawatts. So we're talking very large numbers. As production, Nova Scotia Power, and others, it's now Nova Scotia produces about 10 or 11 terawatt hours, which is a million megawatt hours. So Nova Scotia uses about 11 megawatt hours. The Premier's proposal, Nova Scotia consumes about 11 terawatt hours. The Premier is proposing, his Wind West proposal is for 160 terawatt hours. So you're talking roughly 15 times more electricity. So there's a great deal of electricity that will be produced if this goes ahead, and that's another issue. But it's huge. So what do you do with it? And which is essentially going back to the last part of your question. What do you do with this electricity? Well, it's clearly not going to do any good for us because it's far, far too much. So you have to export it. And there's really, there's really two locations you can transmit to, clearly Canada or the United States. If we focus on Canada for a moment, as you said earlier, it's about a quarter of Canada's electricity consumption. Getting it is either going to be overland through Nova Scotia, through New Brunswick, through Quebec, and onwards, or by submarine cable from the offshore through up to St. Lawrence, perhaps to one of Hydro-Quebec's power stations, and then transmit from there. So that is the Canadian side. The American side would be a similar idea. You would either ship it through Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Maine, and then south, or you would be transmitting it by submarine cable. So that's sort of in a nutshell. There's a great deal of electricity being produced, probably 15 times more than Nova Scotia needs, and that will then have to be sent somewhere, or it's just a complete waste of time.
All right. So that said, when it comes to jurisdictions and the transmission component to it, do you anticipate any challenges when it comes to getting the power to other markets jurisdictionally?
If it was onshore, probably far more than if it was. Sorry, if it went overland, there would be far more because you'd be going through Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Quebec, or conversely down to the south of us. There are arguments to be made for using submarine cables. It's probably less environmentally damaging. You are prone to extreme weather events because we know, in Quebec, like winter storms and so forth, are knocking out their power cables and their transmission towers and so forth. So there is much to be said for going with a submarine cable.
Okay, so when all is said and done, at the end of the day, this would require massive investment and a huge commitment, I would think, from the federal government. What are your thoughts on on the federal government ponying up and investing in to the tune of billions of dollars or whatever the amount would be in order to make this happen?
Well, this is all part of the Prime Minister's projects of national importance or national interest.
Yeah.
The Premier, Nova Scotia, his idea for Wind West sort of dovetails into what's now being talked about is the Eastern Energy Partnership. And the Eastern Energy Partnership is really Nova Scotia's Wind West and Hydro-Quebec and Newfoundland and Labrador, their plans for Churchill Falls expansion and Gull Island. So there is, it's, if you will, it's at the right time if money is the issue. So it could be done I can't say it could be done, but there presumably would be federal money involved.
But in order for it to happen, there's got to be lots of federal money involved. I don't think. I guess what I'm getting at is, would it be possible without a massive investment from the public purse?
Probably not. Because it costs more. Offshore wind, although it produces more, because as we said earlier, there's less obstructions. It produces more, but it's more expensive to install. You've got essentially two types of foundation. One is a fixed bottom in which tubes are basically pile driving, except they're huge piles. And the tubes go into the ground, into the seabed, and then on top of this, the tower, the nacelle, and the blades are all attached. You can also have floating with come sort of how could it be floating? Essentially, the turbine floats on pontoons that are anchored to the seabed, and when storms come, which is an issue that perhaps we can talk about, when extreme weather occurs, it's possible to adjust the buoyancy to weather the storm.
Okay, Larry, listen, I appreciate your time. Thanks for your insight as always, and we'll do it again. Thanks, pal.
Okay, see you.
All right, take care. Larry Hughes, Dalhousie University engineering professor whose area of expertise includes energy systems and climate change. When we come back over the next half hour, we'll talk sports with Cecil, as we always do, and Allister Aalders will join us when we come back.
Facts.
It is a Friday. It is after the 12:30 news, and by tradition, not long-standing tradition, but a few months now, Allister Aalders joins us here, our weather specialist. Allister, hello.
Hello. Where's the cheering?
I know. Listen, it's fun to boo.
Yes.
But the cheering is getting a little long in the tooth now, because we've had several weekends now of pretty stellar weather.
It's been pretty good. And I mean, even, if you are on vacation, the last, week or two, it's been pretty solid. I mean, we've had a few very weak disturbances moving in, but, overall, it's been a pretty solid pattern with, at times uncomfortably humid weather, but also some breaks in the weather too. And I look at Southern Ontario, where they've just had a really hot, humid summer, like relentless heat and relentless, uncomfortable and oppressive humidity. So I think we've had it, a bit better, where we've had those very humid periods, but we've had some nicer, drier days too. The concern, though, that I'm hearing is, that we've talked about, is that now it's a little too dry, especially if you are someone who is relying on your well, because we haven't had a whole lot of rainfall when you really take a look at the numbers, and the wells are starting to go dry in several places in HRM and the surrounding counties.
When do we call it a drought?
Well, we're technically, according to the drought monitor from the federal government, we're technically in a moderate drought now. Obviously, there are a number of variables that are factored into that, including, month to date precipitation. And they only update their modeling, once a month at the end of the month. But, there are other tools that, are examined, based on rainfall patterns that we've had. And there's also, you can examine, the moisture content in the soil and the ground. So there's a number of tools that we can look at to, assess the current situation. But, officially from the federal government at the end of June, we were in a moderate drought here in HRM, and much of Nova Scotia was either abnormally dry or in this moderate drought. And really we haven't, and that was, as I said, at the end of June, we haven't seen really a lot of rain to make a dent in that. We had, a solid downpour earlier in the month that brought a decent shot of rain, but that was over a very short period of time. We haven't had any large areas of low pressure move in to bring a more widespread beneficial rain. It's been very localized, so obviously conditions are going to vary depending on where you are. If you've been, benefiting from perhaps some of these localized downpours this month, perhaps a bit of a different story for you. But, in general, the province and the Maritimes and even into Newfoundland too, it's really been a drier than average pattern so far this summer. Yeah, and I do have some numbers if we want to go over those too.
Let's do that.
So, just for metro area, Stanfield in June, we had 51 millimeters. July had 29 millimeters. So that's to June 1st to today, 80 millimeters compared to the average. Now, this would account for all of July, which will obviously be coming up next week. Typically, we would see an average of 176.5 millimeters June and July. So right now, we're only at about 45% of that normal. So it's well more than half below. And then shearwater, a little bit better. In June, we had 65.7 millimeters. July had 46.2, benefiting from that heavier downpour a few weeks ago where the airport didn't get into it as much. So to date, from June 1st to now, we've had 111.9 millimeters compared to the average of 203 when you add up what we usually see in June and July. So that's about 55% of normal. So certainly far less than normal. In some cases, less than half compared to average. And some of the modeling, with a shout out to Chris Fogarty at Environment and Climate Change Canada, he shared a graph the other day that showed parts of the region have only received about a quarter of their typical rainfall so far this summer. So it has been very, very dry. The rain has been very localized, and unfortunately, we had a drought that we were in before. We made up for it a bit in the spring, but we didn't really establish a great surplus of moisture in the ground to take us into the summer. So it's not surprising to hear that we're dealing with these conditions now.
Yeah, and of course, this comes off a winter of below precipitation levels, below snowpack, and we talked about that, right? So this is all adding to the challenge, right?
It all adds. It's not just what we are experiencing now. You really have to factor in everything that we've experienced over the last several months. Like you said, we are seeing less snow than average in our winters. The snow is, we're not getting as much snow into the spring, like through March and even April that we used to see, and that snow is melting faster than it used to. So it's running off, or it's absorbing, and then it's getting taken up by the trees and the grass pretty fast as it comes back to life in the spring. But yeah, it all dates back to what comes ahead of it. And like you said, we've had more, and it's not just this past winter. We've had more variability in our winter snowfalls. Typically, it's coming in later than average, and it's leaving us sooner than average. So that sets us up in a bit of a situation where if we don't really make up for it in April and certainly into May, that kind of can lead to problems in the summer if we don't get a lot of rainfall. And then you even have to look back to the fall, because fall is, it's turned out to be a a pretty good season here in Nova Scotia in recent years, where we get some pretty nice weather in September and even into October. But, when we get into, kind of that mid to late fall season, that's when we start to get into some of those more fall storms and those defined areas of low pressure moving back in that bring the beneficial rain. And looking back to last fall, we didn't really have a lot of, fall storms or systems that brought in the substantial rain that we need. So, it's all really connected together, and you can't just look at, okay, we're looking at 2 months of data to talk about what we're experiencing right now. But, you have to really look at, what we've experienced all the way back into even, say, last summer and last spring, where you could argue the drought that developed, last summer and into the fall is a contributing factor to the drought we're experiencing now, just because obviously we were in a drought through much of the winter. We had a 2 solid months where we had some above average rainfall, which helped take us out of that. But obviously, we were at a bit of a depletion to begin with, and despite the rainy weekends that we had for several weeks in a row, it didn't provide us with a lot of meaningful rainfall, which is what we need heading into the summer. And as we've talked about, summer rainfall is incredibly localized to begin with.
Yeah. And August, potentially heading into a cooler than average pattern. Tell us about this.
That might excite some people or might worry some people if you're a big fan of summer and be like, where's it going? So a lot of chatter about this on social media this week. Some of the long-range weather models are showing that we'll see an upper-level trough in the jet stream move in from the territories and settle around Hudson Bay or northern Quebec. And that essentially, depending on its position, could lead to some near and even below average temperatures for this time of year. And our average highs are around 24, 25 degrees. Obviously, at the coast, it's usually a bit cooler than that for this time of year. But, in the U.S., they're really talking about this because the National Weather Service is predicting, a period of, near and below average temperatures. What I'm seeing is it'll really depend on where the upper level trough sits, because if it sits farther to our north and west, we could still get into a bit of a southerly or southwesterly flow that helps keep us warmer. But certainly it does look like we have the potential to see as we close out July and go into the first week of August, the potential for some cooler periods where maybe temperatures are just, say, a bit closer to where we should be or a bit cooler than we should be with, relatively lower humidity compared to what we experience at this time of year, which is, mid 20s. And then, in our hottest periods, high 20s into the 30s with that, noticeable humidity. So if it does materialize, that might be welcome for some to bring a bit of relief, although it hasn't been, at least in my assessment, it hasn't been too oppressive so far this summer. We've had a good balance of, we've had the humidity, but we've had some solid breaks in between. But obviously everyone is different, and you might welcome that change, or you might boo and hiss at the change because you want the summer weather to hold on for as long as we can, because we know how fast it can change.
All right, it's Shark Week, so there is a weather connection to Shark Week, and it's involving sharks and their ability to detect changes in barometric pressure. Tell us about this.
Yeah, this was really interesting. I just learned about this week, actually. But researchers have found that sharks can actually sense or predict when bad weather might be coming, in particular hurricanes. So the studies have found that different species of sharks can detect changes, as you mentioned, in barometric pressure. Obviously, in this case, they're more analyzing hurricanes, and when they detect these changes, they swim to deeper waters to avoid getting caught up in a hurricane or the storm surges that associate with the hurricanes. And they're actually tagging sharks to conduct specific research that looks at data along with, other tools that they're using to learn more about hurricanes and how hurricanes develop and strengthen. And I just thought it was really interesting, something like sharks, which you wouldn't think, of course, they're not predicting our day-to-day weather, but it's kind of interesting to learn that, that they can sense these changes and typically move out well ahead of time before these, storms really get developed and seek, I guess, safer safer waters. So I thought it was really interesting.
Absolutely. Okay, our night sky and meteors, and what advice do you give people when it comes to what they can see when it comes to celestial events?
Yes, so this time of year is big time for meteors, and one of the most famous summer meteor showers, the Perseids, is underway now and will be peaking in a couple of weeks. It's around August 12th and 13th, and at its peak we usually see up to 60, even 90 meteors per hour. The unfortunate thing I would say about the showers this year is that we will be in a waning gibbous phase of the moon, so that will provide some brightness to perhaps block some of them out or make it harder to see with the naked eye, because obviously with so many moving per hour, you can just look up at the night sky once your eyes are adjusted to see these. Obviously it's a big draw for photographers and astronomers, so that is a factor that unfortunately will be there this year, but that doesn't mean that you won't see any. And as I said, it's ongoing right now. It goes until August 24th, but that peak is August 12th to 13th when we'll see the most meteors. And obviously a few days before, a few days after, the activity will be pretty high too. The best viewing is obviously well late into the evening, midnight and afterwards, obviously in a location where you're free of light pollution. So here in the city, it'd be a little more challenging to see. But if, doesn't take long to get outside of the city center and you're into a place where it's, there's not as much light pollution. And obviously you need, a clear sky and an unobstructed view to see those meteors shoot across the sky. And it's really cool to see, just because, unlike some of the other celestial events where, it can be harder to see, you can just, kind of sit and watch and enjoy these meteors. So it's pretty cool.
Okay, and quickly again, for those just tuning in, look at again to the weekend weather and early next week.
Yeah, weekend is looking great. There's a cold front tonight with a few showers expected later this evening into the overnight. We could see a thunder shower, but not a whole lot. If we get into a thunderstorm, 5 to 15 millimeters locally, but then high pressure for the weekend. So sunshine tomorrow, near 26 degrees, low humidity. Even the coastlines will be a bit warmer tomorrow because of a northwest wind. And then Sunday, we're back over to an onshore wind. So coastlines are cooler, but still nice. We'll be in the mid 20s with a fair amount of sunshine. And overall, it's looking like the nice stretch of weather continues into early next week.
Okay, Al. Always great, bud.
Great to be here. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. Allister Aalders, our weather specialist. Sports with Cecil when we come back. All right. Time to talk sports with our sports guru, Cecil Wright. Cecil, welcome to the show as always, my friend.
Well, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
All right. So first off, I want to get your take on this, on not necessarily the ruling by the judge with these 5 former members of Canada's World Junior Hockey Team, but the fact that the NHL said in a statement that they're ineligible to play while it reviews the judge's findings. The NHLPA, of course, pushing back against this, as you might expect. What are your thoughts on the fact that they're not allowed to play until the NHL kind of weighs in on this and explores this deeper?
Well, I tread very lightly in this because I've got mixed emotions on everything. But if a judge has found them not guilty or innocent or whatever term you want to apply, then I think that these young men should be allowed back on the ice. I mean, how can you be found not guilty yet still be punished by a league that you don't even have a contract with? I don't understand that.
Are you surprised that they've done this, the league?
I don't know if surprised is the correct term, but I think that the league is overstepping their bounds just a little bit in this case. If they had been found guilty, well, that would be one thing, but being acquitted of the charges in my books means that you should be allowed to return to your game if you're an athlete, or your business if you're a businessman, or whatever the case may be. I don't like the NHL stepping in and taking these steps. I think it sets a dangerous precedent.
Okay, the conduct itself, and look, it depends on your viewpoint, I suppose. But some would say that the conduct itself was distasteful or whatever. What about the judging it based on just the conduct itself and not the legality of it?
Well, that's why I said I have mixed emotions because I have a daughter myself, and I can only imagine a young girl who, is out on the town, has a bit too much to drink, and ends up in a hotel room with 5 young, hockey players or 5 athletes or 5 anybody's, really.
Yeah.
I would be very, very disturbed by the activities that I would suspect had gone on. And then, when you read that, the young lady had a little bit too much to drink. I think, any activity like that combined with alcohol is always a dangerous thing in the first place. So I'm very, very concerned about, what happened. I was concerned when it first went down, even though we didn't know the true story for, a while. But I don't know, man. I'm glad the case is over, and I hope everybody has learned a huge lesson in all of this about, behavior and alcohol and the combination of the two.
All right. Do you think that when it comes to players in particular at the national level, that this type, the warning is out there, right? I'm sure. Don't let's and if that's the case. If the only result of this is that people don't conduct themselves in this way again, then that's a good thing, right?
That's right. That's the hope. That's why I say I am hoping everybody learned a lesson from this, and the lesson is, you be careful with how you treat young women. I mean, these were athletes who are, let's say 21 years of age, let's say. Mm-hmm. Of course, they're going to want to go out on the town and have a good time and go dancing and, hook up with some other people and all that kind of stuff. But, you don't cross the line. And, one way or another, a line was certainly crossed in this particular case.
Yeah. Okay. All right, in the time we've got left, let's talk about the American League East, and the Blue Jays seem to be kind of running away with this right now. I know it seems early, but it's, man, oh man, they look awfully good. What are your thoughts on what the Jays have done?
Yeah, good. I'm glad they're playing so well right now. It's going to make it that much sweeter when they go off the cliff there in late August in September. Yeah. I mean, there's no way they can keep this up. You and I both know it, No team can. Look at the Dodgers. Dodgers started out on fire, and now they've lost about 9 out of 10 or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't expect the Blue Jays to keep it up, although I got to tell you, I'm impressed with what they're doing. Everything is working out great right now, but let's see if they can sustain it.
Who might give them a challenge? Do you think the Yankees have what it takes to give them a run?
I would say, yeah. I mean, the Yankees are the Yankees. They're always going to be there. Same with the Red Sox. The Red Sox have a good team, and I know they've got to make some moves at the trading deadline, and that's going to be the whole key for these 3 teams is who's going to do what. The Yankees are going to make a move. I don't know what they're going to do, but I guarantee you they're going to do something, and the Blue Jays are going to try to counter that, which kind of leaves the Red Sox twisting in the wind.
Yeah. Okay. All right. What else we got locally before I let you go?
Big baseball weekend. The Sydney Sooners are coming to town. They're going to play 4 games on Saturday and Sunday. 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday against the Halifax Mets at Mainland Common, starting at 3 o'clock on Saturday. And, man, I'm telling you, Halifax, they got to win at least 2. Preferably 3 games to get themselves right back in contention, which they're in playoff contention right now. I'm going to tell you how strong this league is. Last night, the Metro Brewers, who are in last place, lost to Dartmouth 2-1 in 12 innings.
Wow.
Now, can you imagine how great that game was?
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, sirree.
All right,
so
Cecil.
Come on out and check it out.
Okay, pal. Always great. We'll do it again next week.
Talk soon.
Okay, take care. Cecil Wright, our sports guru. Thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it very much. I'd like to thank Vanessa Van Ness on the other side of the glass at the control boards, doing a fine job. As always, have yourself a great weekend. We're back on Monday, 10 o'clock. See you then.